To me, photography is an art of observation. It's about finding something interesting in an ordinary place. I found it has little to do with the things you see, and everything to do with the way you see them, and everything to do with the way you tell the story. Hi, I'm Laura Hicks. This is me as a young child. I grew up in a suburb about 45 minutes north of Cincinnati, Ohio. Right about there. Overall, my childhood was a pretty good one. My mom was uber supportive. From a very young age, she fostered my creativity. She helped me write books and listen for countless hours while I sang and performed in front of her. My singing and acting are atrocious, by the way. This is me. I grew up loving photography. When other girls were spending their money on Barbies, I was investing my hard-earned cash on the best 110 film camera money could buy. Yep, I'm pretty sure this is the exact one I owned. My younger sister, who was generally less than thrilled about my hobby, became my subject matter. In true wedding photographer fashion, I would tell her how to pose and where to stand. Below, you're seeing the first photograph ever signed by me. I even gave it a title, Sarah E. I actually remember making this piece of photographic art. I pulled out our trusty instant camera, posed my subject, and took one deliberate image. At 13 years old, I got my first real camera. It was a present from my grandpa. He was an amateur photographer who was willing to fund my budding obsession. The photo, however, was taken by my mom, who was evidently not a budding photographer. This is me as a teen with said camera. Oh my. Here are some of my early photos. Yes, I grew up in the 80s and 90s with big hair and poofy bangs. As I grew up, I found out I loved to travel. These images were taken on my first cross-country trip when I was only 18 years old. But unfortunately, for the next few years, I didn't use my camera very much. I headed off to college, studied psychology, and met a guy who would later become my husband. Fast forward about 4 years. I was a brand new mom, and unfortunately, I'd just been laid off, while on maternity leave nonetheless. So I went back to the drawing board, and I did some soul searching to think about what I really wanted to do with my life. Photography had always been a passion of mine, but could I really make it a career? Since I didn't have any formal training, I bought myself a nice 35mm camera and took some photography classes. Within a few short months, I began studying under a local wedding photographer. These are a few of my first images as a professional. It didn't take long before I had my own business up and running. I was photographing weddings on the weekends, high school seniors during the summer, and families in the fall. All while taking care of my growing family. That kept growing and growing and growing. Because we're not really a traditional family. My husband and I are foster parents. Currently, there are 6 people in our home, including our 2 biological sons. Over the last 6 years, we have fostered 7 children in our family. Here are our boys. They love to be outside, watch TV, and play video games. They play sports, do homework, and hang out with their friends. We are busy all of the time. And here's the thing, the daily hustle of life can be creatively draining. It had been one of those days. Projects due, emails, phone calls, photo editing, children whining, deadlines. I just needed a few moments to relax. So I grabbed a camera and headed outside for some shutter therapy. The pivotal part of this experience wasn't that I went outside to clear my brain. It was the camera I chose to take with me. See, by this point in my life, I was an editor for a digital camera review website. And I had a nifty little camera sitting right next to me. And it had the most amazing macro mode I had ever seen. So I decided to put it to the test. Within minutes, I found myself completely immersed in my own little world. Instead of just seeing this, I saw this. It was the difference between seeing this and seeing this. It was my light bulb moment. What I realized at that moment was how much I loved photographing a world that is rarely seen with the naked eye. So what started off as a mental release soon became my newest obsession. I had found the joy of natural macro photography. I was able to uncover beautiful and unique subjects nearly anywhere I looked. Take, for example, the small pond in my backyard. It doesn't look like much from this unedited iPhone picture. But when you take a closer look, it has so much potential. Rocks, lily pads, flowers, frogs, bugs, spiders, and each one begging for its story to be told. My storytelling is simple. Single subject personification through clean, natural photography and editing. The more my viewer can relate to the subject, the better I have done my job as an artist. Let's start with an easy one. Rise and shine. Water lily has a very short lifespan. They generally only live 3 to 5 days. Every evening, they close up their petals like the doors of a local shop after a long day. Every morning, the lily opens its petals, revealing its inner beauty. Blowing ever so slightly in the breeze, this ornamental grass is ending its life cycle for the year. Throughout the seasons, the grass appealed to our senses by creating visual movement and texture. And if we stop to listen, it produced soothing, rustling sounds with every stir of the wind. This baby dragonfly was perched on the edge of a lily pad, leaving behind a trail of pollen where he landed. Dragonflies are restless creatures that don't stay still for very long. When I photograph insects, I often think about where they are going and where they have been. Sometimes, I even create little stories about them in my head. Imagine this guy is a precocious 8-year-old boy who loves his independence and has a curious mind. His parents gave him just enough freedom to play amongst the flowers and soak in the world around him. His adventure, however, could not be complete unless he returned home good and messy. I thoroughly enjoy the frogs in our pond. For the last few years, I have watched them grow from tadpoles to baby frogs to large adult frogs. This is one of our frogs during his 2nd year. When he was a baby, he would calmly sit on the lily pad and let me photograph him as long as I wanted. Now that he's an adult, he is very skittish. As soon as I get near the pond, he jumps in, warning the others of my arrival. Just found out we have 3 new baby frogs that emerge from the water. I love how the life cycle continues, and I enjoy watching the little frog family grow in the sanctuary of our backyard. This is one of our newest frogs. I call him Kermit, because obviously I am not that creative with naming things on the fly. This has got to be the coolest millipede I've ever seen. He's the James Dean of millipedes. He's got style, he's got class, He's got swagger, and he did it all with a hint of fabulous side lighting, if I could only be this photogenic. I take the Boy Scout approach with my natural macro photography, leave no trace. I am very hands-off with my subjects. This guy, however, took a free ride on my shirt. So I charged him a session and placed him on the leaf after we were done. While flies are generally not the subjects of a great story, I thought this guy deserved some time in the spotlight. His iridescent body matched perfectly with the bright, colorful flower he landed on. Have you ever noticed how detailed a fly's eyes and body are? Before shooting macro photography, I had no idea that flies were so hairy. And those eyes, can you imagine what it would look like to see through those things? Bees are amazingly hard workers. They literally work themselves to death during the summer months. During the summer months, the bees only generally live for about 6 weeks. And according to the New York Times, bees have the ability to recognize faces. It makes you wonder, what was he thinking when he was looking at me? Did he see me as a danger, or was he as interested in me as I was in him? The Buckeye Moth. Isn't she beautiful? This pretty little thing with legs daintily crossed was cuddled up next to her mate, a homely looking guy in desperate need of a makeover. Except it turns out he was a she, and she is a he, and moth makeovers aren't really a thing. Nevertheless, the two made for great subject matter, as well as providing me a lesson on gender identification of moths. There is only you and your camera. The limitations in your photography are in yourself. For what we see is what we are. I want my photography to be a reflection of who I am and what I value. For me, macro photography allows me to get lost in another world, a world that values nature, that appreciates all living things, and sees beauty in the ordinary. As photographic artists, our goal is to tell a story in a single image, to make the viewer see past the obvious and get lost in the emotion, to become mesmerized by both the simplicity of the subject and the detail of the sum of its parts. When I allow myself to truly get lost in the moment, and the emotion of it all, that's when it happens. I get so hyper-focused on my subject that the rest of the world simply melts away. And all that remains is me, my camera, and my subject. Like a single water droplet on a single leaf. Or a multitude of raindrops begging for us to see life upside down. They call us to come closer, think differently, and see details in the minute. To see an ordinary flower as an extraordinary burst of energy that pulls you slowly and methodically deeper into its clutches. Or to see a beautiful caterpillar whose long, spiky hair reminds me of fireworks bursting in the night sky. To realize that this caterpillar, as amazing as it already is, will soon transform into a completely different being, one that goes from being bound to the ground to one that spreads its wings and takes flight. A spider's web whose delicate and well-constructed design mimics an ornate chandelier hanging in the most opulent of homes. A simple drop of water that was amazingly transformed into a gorgeous ice crystal we call a snowflake. Through the natural forces of temperature and atmospheric pressure, the snowflake takes on its own distinctive shape, each one unique due to the pressure placed upon it. Only to return to the sky, and once again it can become a completely unique work of art. That is pretty enough to photograph on the lid of a garbage can with that same little camera that started this whole obsession. It is the moment you realize you will far outlive every single one of your subjects, that these moments are fleeting, that life is finite, that even the simplest of stories longs to be told. The greatest art in the world is the art of storytelling. What story will you tell today? Thank you very much.